With 67 days to inauguration, pro-Trump protesters gathered Saturday in Washington, D.C. President Trump, who has refused to concede the election, greeted the crowd from his motorcade. These tens of thousands gathered in the nation's capital for the so-called Million MAGA March. Demonstrators rallied to support the president's unproven claims of widespread voter fraud. Meanwhile, President-elect Joe Biden continues to work on a transition to the Oval Office in January, but his focus remains centered around battling the coronavirus pandemic. On Sunday, Mr. Biden's incoming chief of staff, Ron Klain, said that the transition team still has not been authorized to work with the current administration on COVID-19 efforts. Michael George has the latest.
President Trump delighted, cheering supporters with a drive-by at a so-called Million MAGA March in Washington, D.C.
The message of this event is to demand transparency and to protect election integrity.
As night fell, groups of pro-Trump demonstrators and counter-demonstrators remained on the streets, with the police trying to keep a tense peace. Later in the evening, the crowd thinned as protesters dispersed. President Trump continued to tweet unproven claims of widespread voter fraud, as he still refuses to admit election defeat. The government is restricting access and funding to President-elect Joe Biden's transition team. In a statement Friday, former Trump White House Chief of Staff John Kelly said, in part, "The delay in transitioning is an increasing national security and health crisis. The current administration does not have to concede, but it should do the right thing, just in case the constitutional system declares they lost." In a Rose Garden speech Friday, President Trump seemed to allude to change ahead as he discussed the coronavirus, which is spiking across the U.S.
This administration will not be going to a lockdown. Hopefully whatever happens in the future, who knows which administration it will be. I guess time will tell.
In a tweet, President-elect Biden called the federal response to the pandemic woefully lacking and urged President Trump to do more to battle the virus now. On Saturday, Biden took a break for a bike ride with the next First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, near their Delaware beach house. Michael George, CBS News.
For more on this, let's bring in CBS News correspondent Nikole Killion. Nikole, we're at another dark point in the pandemic. Please update us. Is the Trump administration allowing any coordination between the incoming administration and the officials currently working on the pandemic response and future vaccine distribution?
Well, the Biden transition team continues to urge the General Services Administration to make an ascertainment. That is the formal process of moving the transition forward. The agency has to sign off on the necessary paperwork, and as of now, the agency says it has not made that determination yet. But in the meantime, the transition team continues to forge ahead as far as specifically on the coronavirus. Officials have said they would certainly like to be able to contact officials like Dr. Fauci, speak with the current task force, speak with Health and Human Services, for instance, to try to coordinate with them on vaccine distribution plans. But because they can't, they are trying to do other things, whether that's gleaning information from scientific circles and also increasing their messaging. We continue to hear the president-elect and his team continuing to urge Americans to mask up, to social distance, and also encouraging local governments and governors to try to do their part.
What about what we've heard from what we heard in Michael George's package, former President Trump's chief of staff urging that even without conceding, go ahead and give the incoming Biden administration access to these officials. Is there any sense within the White House that you can report that people are considering that?
Well, look, as I mentioned, the agency that is responsible for signing off, the General Services Administration, continues to say that it has not made an ascertainment yet. But what one senior administration official has noted to me, as far as, for instance, the president-elect having access to classified briefings, that the General Services Administration doesn't control that. So even if the agency has not made that ascertainment yet, this official argues that it shouldn't prohibit the president-elect from getting some of these intelligence briefings. But again, as far as coordinating with federal agencies at large, that certainly remains a broader issue, and that really can't happen until that ascertainment determination is made.
All right. Well, at one point on the campaign trail, Mr. Biden suggested that he might enact a national mask mandate if he was elected president. One of his COVID task force members recently floated the idea of a national lockdown. Obviously, as you and I both know, these positions have been a bit fluid, but are we learning more about what the incoming administration would like to do to change the trajectory of this pandemic?
Well, as far as this idea of a temporary lockdown, it appears that the COVID task force assembled by the president-elect seems to be walking that back just a little bit. It was just one advisor specifically who did suggest that as an idea, and earlier today that official did try to clarify his remarks. You know, at the end of the day, his concern is that, the more that Americans have contact with each other, obviously potentially increases the spread of the virus. So to the extent that we can limit people from being in close contact, that really is the preferred way of trying to handle this. But certainly other members on this advisory task force have kind of pushed back against the idea of doing some type of temporary lockdown. And overall, the transition team has said that certainly a part of the idea of assembling this coronavirus task force was so that the president-elect could hear different voices, could get different ideas, even if they disagree.
All right, Nikole, beyond COVID-19, what are some of the other policy goals that the incoming Biden administration is focusing on right now?
Well, we continue to hear transition officials, reiterate some of the pledges we heard from the president-elect when he was on the campaign trail. For instance, rejoining organizations like the World Trade Organization or rejoining, for instance, the Paris Climate Agreement. Also, there is a priority around Dreamers and protecting Dreamers. So another possible action is to try to reinstate the DACA program and obviously take steps to address health care as well, which was certainly a big issue that the president-elect raised on the trail.
On Friday, CBS News declared Joe Biden the presumptive winner in Georgia, but there's still a hand recount being done there under the supervision of the Republican Attorney General. Do we know, Nikole, when we will have a definitive result? I think I saw by last count about 30% of that hand recount has been completed at this point.
Well, I think the expectation is perhaps that it may be completed later this week. As far as the Biden transition team is concerned, they did hold a briefing with reporters earlier today where they expressed confidence in the outcome and continue to dismiss President Trump's lawsuits, not only in that state, but writ large, as baseless and without merit. And they do feel, while they will abide by the process of this recount, they do feel like it's not really going to change the outcome, that Joe Biden did in fact win the state, and that the ultimate results and votes will prove that out.
Okay. And in addition, it's worth noting that even if Georgia were to change, it doesn't change the result of the election, certainly by the electoral vote count. So, Nikole, looking forward to the rest of this week. What can we expect from President-elect Biden and President Trump? I'm wondering if you think we're going to get some more cabinet announcements for Biden, or hear from the president, or have him take any questions from reporters. Any of that on the horizon?
Well, certainly there's a lot of anticipation for who the president-elect may name to his cabinet. And over the weekend, he said that he is getting closer to making some of those decisions. Overall, the transition has said that they expect more staffing announcements soon, likely within weeks. And we really expect, anytime between now and early December to be a potential window for them to make some of these announcements. As far as the week ahead, we do expect the president-elect and the vice president-elect Kamala Harris will be making remarks about the economy on Monday. And then, of course, we do anticipate that the president-elect will also be briefed at some point this week by national security experts. Also, the president-elect's chief of staff mentioned today that the team might also try to start reaching out to some of these drug companies that are working on vaccines for the coronavirus and start consultations. So that's what we expect as far as the president-elect is concerned. As far as President President Trump, we don't yet have an official public schedule for him. Obviously, we saw his first appearance since the election in the Rose Garden on Friday, and of course, he continues to tweet, so it remains to be determined if, in fact, we will hear more from him later this week.
All right, Nikole Killion, thank you.
You bet.